Hello, everyone. This is Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. I'm here with my wife, Diane Silver Paul, Reverend Diane Silver Paul, Millie and Rodney on the line. I think we'll be here shortly. Tonight we're going to study paper 94, the Melchizedek Teachings in the Orient. And this starts on page 1027, on paper 9401. And I'll say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight that we might study this wonderful revelation. Pray that you'll bless this group, open our hearts and minds, that we might learn something tonight to share with others, and that we'll do your will in our lives. And thank you for, and give you the praise in your Son Jesus' name. Amen. The Melchizedek Teachings in the Orient. I'll start out tonight. The early teachers of the Salem religion penetrated to the remotest tribes of Africa and Eurasia, ever preaching Maccabee's gospel of man's faith and trust in one universal God as the only price of attaining divine favor. Melchizedek's covenant with Abraham was the pattern for all the early propaganda that went out from Salem and other centers. Orient has never had more enthusiastic and aggressive missionaries of any religion than those noble men and women who carried the teachings of Melchizedek over the entire Eastern Hemisphere. These missionaries were recruited from many peoples and races, and they largely spread their teachings through the medium of native converts. They established training centers in different parts of the world where they taught the natives the Salem religion, and then commissioned these pupils to function as teachers among their own people. All right, so this is basically the start of the Salem teachers spreading.
Rodney has an echo. Rodney has an echo.
Pardon? Hi, Rodney. Hey, guys.
So there was the covenant that we hear about from Abraham is this agreement between Melchizedek and Abraham. And this was the pattern that all the teachers, basically the Salem teachers, took out to all the tribes all over Eurasia and all over the East, so the Eastern Hemisphere. That's what they're talking about here. Let's go ahead and see. Millie, would you take the next one, please? Oops, you skipped one. Do you go back?
Just don't have it.
The mountains.
No.
Just click on it
Okay.
again and you'll have to go back to it.
I don't have that one.
That's because it's this one here.
Why don't you read that one? The next one should start the Salem teachings in Vedic India.
Is that good? Hang on, let's try and bring it back. Let me take that. I'll do this one up here. You just do that.
This one says the Melchizedek teachings in the Orient. Does that mean that Abraham was in the eastern part of the world?
Well, it was considered,
I know Turkey and Greece and whatnot are considered Orient also. Not necessarily Greece, but Turkey and parts further east.
yeah, it was considered like the Mediterranean area was considered the eastern part of the world, along with the border of the Oriental areas, including Russia.
And this is the next one. You want me to read this one?
Hang on just 1 second. Millie, Diane accidentally closed the paper here.
Doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and start, Millie? I'll have it up in just a second.
1. The same teachings in Vedic India. In the days of Melchizedek, India was a cosmopolitan country which had recently come under the political and religious dominance of the Aryan Andite invaders from the north and west. At this time, only the northern and western portions of the peninsula had been extensively permeated by the Aryans. These Vedic newcomers had brought along with them their many tribal deities. Their religious forms of worship followed closely the ceremonial practices of their early Andite forebears, in that the father still functioned as a priest and the mother as a priestess, and the family hearth was still utilized as an altar.
Now this is very important because these Indian people basically had the family unit as the priesthood. The mother being the priestess and the father being the priest, right? And they had many, many different gods. They had a god for everything in the world. And many of the Indian people still believe the same way today.
The Andites still have many gods?
Yeah, no, not the Andites, the Indian people. Many people in India still believe in picking their own god, basically. And they've got many, many types of god. Now, the Vedic priest eventually became more and more powerful, and they become separated from the family. But in the beginning, they were all the Vedic believers believed that the father was the priest of the family and the mother was the priestess. All right?
Well, that sounds right to me.
Yeah. I was going to explain this a little bit more about these. All right. Also, something very interesting about that previous paragraph is they mentioned the Aryan people, which, if you remember, it was the Aryans that Hitler tried to bring back, as total, all races being just white. Okay. And it's kind of interesting because those races originally started out as Andites, so it was a more primitive people. So Hitler was really trying to bring back the same primitive type metamorphosis in religion, which is going backwards. So anyway, all right, Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, well, you're way too loud.
Way too much.
Yeah.
I don't know how to turn this down ever.
Yeah, you're overshooting the microphone, Rodney, so we can't understand what you're saying because it's so loud.
Okay, my apologies. I'm gonna
Back up.
and I'll be back.
All right, what do you say?
He's gonna go and come back.
Oh,
Turn it off.
okay. Well, Dear, you want to take the next
The Vedic cult was then in process of growth and metamorphosis under the direction of the Brahmin caste of teacher priests, who were gradually assuming control over the expanding ritual of worship. The amalgamation of the one-time 33 Aryan deities was well underway when the Salem missionaries penetrated the north of India.
Did you catch that? 33 different Aryan deities? Okay. And this was under the Brahmin caste, which is still part of India today. Right? The polytheism of these Aryans represented the generation of their earlier monotheism, occasioned by their separation into tribal units, each having its venerated god. This devolution of the original monotheism and Trinitarianism of Andite Mesopotamia was in process of resynthesis in the early centuries of the second millennium before Christ. The many gods were organized into a pantheon under the triune leadership of Dies Peter, the Lord of Heaven, Andrea, the tempestuous Lord of the atmosphere, and Angi, the three-headed fire god, Lord of the earth, and the vestigial symbol of the earlier Trinity concepts. So did y'all catch what they were saying there? They basically went backwards from a monotheism to a polytheism. In other words, they went from believing in one God, God the Father, into many, many gods. And that is still true today by many of these Indian people. Okay? And they took the Trinity concept and basically converted into these Indian gods. Okay? And that's what happened.
What is the origin on the Indian gods? I mean, how do you come up with a god?
They just picked something. You remember on the show a couple of weeks ago
You can understand that tempestuous Lord of the atmosphere.
yeah.
They're inundated with storms and sandstorms, rainstorms,
Yeah.
hurricanes from the ocean, or whatever they call it.
Morgan Freeman did a great show, and he did.
That's
he
what I
dealt
was
with
talking
that.
about. When he went to India, Morgan Freeman, in the story of the thing on God, he basically was talking to some of the Indian people, and one lady was explaining to him there are so many different gods in India because people can just pick basically whomever they want to be their god. Okay, so it's like that's what they call it, polytheism.
The previous paper had 30-something gods, and now they brought it down to 3. That's progress.
Oh yeah, but they went back up to 30-something again, Millie, which is kind of unusual. Millie, would you take the next paragraph? Hang on. Let me go forward. Okay.
Definite henotheistic developments were paving the way for evolved monotheism. Agni, the most ancient deity, was often exalted as the father head of the entire pantheon, the deity father principle, sometimes called Prajapata,
Yeah.
sometimes termed Brahma, was submerged in the theological battle in which the Brahmin priest later fought with the Salem teachers. Brahman was conceived as the energy divinity principle activating the entire Vedic pantheon.
And they never gave in to this concept of one deity, monotheism. Okay?
Brahman was conceived as the energy divinity principle activating the entire Vedic pantheon.
Yeah.
He was the one that activated all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guess what, man?
Yeah, it was, and it's still that way today.
Forward, and they went backwards, and then they went forward again.
Yeah, but their concept of Brahman was not the concept of God the Father, though, Millie. That's what we need to understand.
No.
Yeah, even though they're talking about energy divinity, like an over-controller of everything, he's not the only over-controller of everything, basically. So, alright, and they went loggerheads with the Salem teachers, basically. Alright. Rodney, are you back?
Yes, is that better?
Oh,
Yes,
much
yes,
better.
much better.
Yeah.
How you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
There's been a problem in the past. My apology.
No problem.
Computers are wretched things.
I think I figured it out.
Alright.
The Salem missionaries preached the one God of Melchizedek, the Most High of heaven. This portrayal was not altogether disharmonious with the emerging concept of the Father, Brahma, as the source of all gods. But the Salem doctrine was non-ritualistic and is ran directly counter to the dogmas, traditions, and teachings of the Brahma priesthood. Never would the Brahmin priest accept the Salem teachings of salvation through faith, favor with God, apart from ritualistic
Observances.
Observances.
observances and sacrificial ceremony.
What does that sound like? Christianity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just accepting the fact that you are saved through faith, the Brahmin priest would not accept salvation without these rituals and sacrifices and things like that. And so the Christian faith comes along. What do? They grab a hold of the concept of Christ being the last sacrifice for all your sins. Okay?
But some anti-Christian churches still have ritualistic observances and still give up things for them, which is sacrificial.
Right. That's right. So the priest and the Salem teachers were at odds constantly because they taught this simple concept of you're saved through your own faith. God forgives you of all your transgressions just through faith. And the Brahmins want you to do ritualistic ceremonies and things like that and sacrifice animals, okay, for your sins. So, and then the Jews picked up the same thing, didn't they? I mean, they'd been sacrificing humans and they replaced that with animals. And then along comes Paul the Apostle, and he puts Christ up as the ultimate sacrifice for everyone's sins. Okay, instead of teaching that you were saved through just your faith alone. Okay, it's interesting how Melchizedek taught this, Adam and Eve taught this, and Jesus taught the same concept over and over again, that you're saved through faith, and that was all there needed to be. So, we're kind of hard-headed in accepting things, right?
The rejection of the Melchizedek gospel trust in God and salvation through faith marked a vital turning point for India. The Salem missionaries had contributed much to the loss of faith in all the ancient Vedic gods, but the leaders, the priests of Vedism, refused to accept the Melchizedek teaching of one God and one simple faith.
The Brahmins called the sacred writings of their day in an effort to combat the Salem teachers. And this compilation, as later revised, has come on down to modern times as the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is still read and used in India today. Matter of fact, if you watch Ancient Aliens, they refer back to the same thing constantly in Rig Veda. One of the most ancient of sacred books. The second, third, and fourth Vedas follow as the Brahmins sought to crystallize, formalize, and fix their rituals of worship and sacrifice upon the peoples of those days. Taking at their best, these writings are the equal of any other body of similar character in the beauty of concept and the truth of discernment. But this superior religion became contaminated with the thousands upon thousands of superstitions, cults, and rituals of southern India. It progressively metamorphosed into the most variegated system of theology ever developed by mortal man. An examination of the Vedas will disclose some of the highest and some of the most debased concept of deity ever to be conceived. So even though they went to great length to try to explain everything out, they're basically saying the examination of these Vedas will disclose some of the highest and some of the most debased concept of deity ever to be conceived. What do they mean by debased? They mean they're totally wrong, right? They're totally on the wrong track with this. So, okay. Millie, would you take the next one, Brahmanism?
2. Brahmanism. As the Salem missionaries penetrated southward into the Dravidian Deccan, they encountered an increasing caste system, the scheme of the Aryans to prevent loss of racial identity in the face of a rising tide of secondary Sangit people. Since the Brahmin priest caste was the very essence of the system, the social order greatly retarded the progress of the Salem teachers. This caste system failed to save the Aryan race, but it did succeed in perpetuating the Brahmins. who in turn have maintained their religious hegemony in India to the present time.
So they're still very popular in India even today, right? The Brahmin religion. All right. Well, Rodney, would you take the next one?
And now with the weakening of Vedism, further rejection of higher truth, the cult of the Aryans became subject to increasing inroads from the Deccan. In a desperate effort to stem the tide of racial extinction and religious obliteration, the Brahmin caste sought to exalt themselves above all else. They taught that the sacrifice to deity in itself was all efficacious.
Yeah, in other words, by sacrificing to deity, it took care of everything. Okay, it was all effective, basically.
That it was all compelling in its potency. They proclaimed that of the two essential divine principles of the universe, one was Brahman, the deity, and the other was the Brahmin priesthood. Among no other Urantia peoples had the priests pursued to exalt themselves above even their gods, to relegate to themselves the honors due their gods. But they went so absurdly far with these presumptuous claims that the whole precarious system collapsed before the debasing cults which poured in from the surrounding and less advanced civilizations. The vast Vedic priesthood itself floundered and sank beneath the black flood of inertia and pessimism, which their own selfish and unwise assumption had brought upon all of them.
Wow.
Yeah, well, right. So basically, the Vedism, the cult of the Aryans really had its own doom through itself, okay, because they tried to rise themselves equal and above the gods themselves, which didn't fly.
And that's exactly what Hitler did.
Yeah, that's exactly what Hitler did. It's probably why he tried to bring it back.
That's why he escaped to Colombia,
Yeah.
life in South America.
Yeah.
I think in pronunciation that E on Vedism is A. D-E is Bay.
They, yeah, I believe it is.
Bay.
Yeah.
If you want to pronounce it
Okay.
right.
That's right.
I'd like-
Vedic, I think is what
No,
it is.
she's saying Vedism.
Vedism, yeah.
V-A is his pronunciation. The
E
undue,
is
con-
pronounced as an A.
the undue concentration of self led certainly to a fear of the non-evolutionary perpetuation of self in an endless round of successive incarnations as man, beast, or weeds. And of all the contaminating beliefs which could have become fastened upon what may have been an emerging monotheism, none was so stultifying as this belief in transmigration, the doctrine of the reincarnation of souls, which came from the Dravidian Deccan. This belief in the weary and monotonous round of repeated transmigrations robbed struggling mortals of their long-cherished hope of finding their deliverance and spiritual advancement in death, which had been a part of the early Vedic faith.
Okay, so that's basically how reincarnation started. Okay, you got that? All right, so the concept of reincarnation and transmigration from a human to animals and back from animals to human type thing. This is all
Weeds. Or weeds.
or weeds or a tree or just about anything, right? That's what we're talking about, this transmigration. And this is what
These poor people who work so hard for their salvation.
yeah.
Just giving up this and that and praying to this one and that one and just everything they could think of.
Yeah, and it was so simple. All they had to do is have faith.
It was hard to believe it could be that simple. As Christians still think it today. It's hard to believe it's that simple.
That's right. Man is a reincarnation. Incarnation is man, beast, or weeds. It'd be pretty bad to come back as a weed. Huh? All right. Oh. This philosophically debilitating teaching was soon followed by the invention of the doctrine of eternal escape from self by submergence in the universal rest and peace of absolute union with the Brahman, the oversoul of all creation. So you'd be gobbled up, right? Mortal desire and human ambition were effectively ravished and virtually destroyed. For more than 2,000 years, the better minds of India have sought to escape from all desire, and thus was opened wide the door for the entrance of those later cults and teachings which had virtually shackled the souls of many Hindu peoples in the chains of spiritual hopelessness. Of all of civilizations, the Vedic Aryan paid the most terrible price for its rejection of the Salem gospel. Everything has a result. Right? Millie, would you take the next one, please?
The bothers me. They sought to escape from their desires.
Yeah, and they still do that today, Millie. Many Indian people try to escape from all emotion, all desire, everything, basically become numb because they believe that they're going to be eventually die and be...
We try to escape from all our desires and our wants and passions.
Didn't you say that the women, when the babies are born, the girl babies, that they're not circumcised, but they are altered?
They're basically altered so that they have no sensual feelings at all. Yeah. And that still goes on in many places today. Not only in India, but in Africa also.
Okay. Caste alone could not perpetuate the Aryan religio-culture system, and as the inferior religions of the Deccan permeated the north, there developed an age of despair and hopelessness. It was during these dark days that the cult of taking no life arose, and it has ever since persisted. Many of the new cults were frankly atheistic, claiming that such salvation attainable could come through only man's own unaided efforts. But throughout a great deal of all of this, unfortunate philosophy distorted remnants of Melchizedek and even the Adamic teachings can be traced. Distorted remnants.
Distorted remnants of
The
it.
teachings.
Right.
But the taking no life, that's Buddhist.
Yeah.
Harm's no different thing.
Yeah. That is. You know, it's interesting how much the teachings that Melchizedek did starting in Salem affected all religions after that. You know, it really is. So Melchizedek's teaching mission, emergency teaching mission, was a grand success if you think about it. Because he did influence all the religions that came after that, right?
I wish we had more literature on the actual teachings of Melchizedek to Abraham.
I wish we did too. Because they only touch on small things here. The only things they really teach us that he taught is the fatherhood of God and brotherhood of man, just like Jesus. That's about it. But he taught many other things. He taught them many of them, the Trinity and the organization of the universe, the seven super universes, and many things like that. And many of the other religions took those and later came up with the seven heavens and things like that. And these were all from the original teachings of Melchizedek. So it's kind of interesting.
But Jesus didn't eat meat. Talk about harming other things. He was not kill animal.
Well, he is fresh.
He did not advocate vegetarianism, but he
No.
practiced.
Okay. Who's up next? Oh, Millie. Millie, I think you're up next.
Okay. These were the times of the compilation of the later scriptures of the Hindu faith. The Brahmanas and the Upanishads,
Vanishing.
having rejected the teachings of personal religion through the personal faith experience with the one God, having become contaminated with the flood of debasing and debilitating cults and creeds of the Deccan, with their anthropomorphism, and reincarnation, the Brahmanic priesthood experienced a violent reaction against these dictating beliefs. There was a definite effort to seek and to find true reality. The Brahmins set out to de-anthropomorphize the Indian concept of deity, but in so doing, they stumbled into the previous error of depersonalizing the concept of God, and they emerged not with a lofty spiritual ideal of the Paradise Father, but with a distant and metaphysical idea of an all-encompassing absolute.
Now, what they're talking about here is their concept came up. Oh, did everybody miss that whole paragraph? Oops. Instead of coming up with a concept of a God that is a personal God, like the God the Father, they came up with this concept of an all-encompassing force that everything goes to. Okay, and that's what they're talking about, this all-encompassing absolute, this idea of the absolute. And they replaced their concept of a God or a personal God, the Father, with this, that all human beings end up becoming part of, and you lose your personality in doing this. So, not good. Here.
In their efforts at self-preservation, the Brahmins had rejected the one God of Melchizedek, and now they found themselves with the hypothesis of Brahman, that indefinite and elusive philosophic self, that impersonal and infinite and potent it, which has left the spiritual life of India helpless and prostrate from the unfortunate day to the 20th century.
That's what they're talking about by it. Absolutely. It was during the times of the writing of the Upanishads that Buddhism arose in India. But despite its success of 1,000 years, it could not compete with the later Hinduism. Despite a higher morality, its early portrayal of God was even less well-defined than that of Hinduism, which provided for lesser and personal deities. And this is where they get all the different deities in India today. Buddhism finally gave way in northern India before the onslaught of a militant Islam, with its clear-cut concept of Allah as the supreme God of the universe, the military God of the world and the universe, right? And that's where the Islams get this militant stand of only those who believe in Islam should survive on the world, right? Brahmanistic philosophy. The highest phase of Brahmanism is hardly a religion. It was truly one of the most noble reaches of the mortal mind into the domains of philosophy and metaphysics. Having started out to discover final reality, the Indian mind did not stop until it had speculated about almost every phase of theology, accepting the essential dual concept of religion, the existence of the universal Father of all universe creations, and the fact of the ascending experience in the universe of these very creatures as they seek to attain the eternal Father, who has commanded them to be perfect even as he is perfect. Millie.
Yes. In the concept of Brahman, the minds of those days truly grasped at the idea of some all-pervading absolute. For this postulate was at one the same time identified as creative energy and cosmic reaction. Brahman was conceived to be beyond all definition, capable of being comprehended only by the successive negation of all finite qualities. It was definitely a belief in the absolute, even as infinite being, but this concept was largely devoid of personality, attributes, and was therefore not experienceable by individual religions.
Because there was no personality, right? No relationship.
But devoid of personality, that's the
Void
way
of
we got.
That's right. That's right. See, we believe that God is not only a personality, but we believe in the Father's personality circuit, and that all personality comes from God the Father. Without God the Father, no one else would have personality. Rodney.
Rodney gets all the good words.
That's right.
Excuse me. Brahman, Narayana, was conceived as the absolute, the infinite it is, the primarily creative potency of the potential cosmos, the universal self, existing, static, and potential throughout all eternity. Had the philosophers of those days been able to make the next advance in deity conception, had they been able to conceive of the Brahman as associative and creative, as a personality approachable by created and involving beings, then might such a teaching have become the most advanced literature of deity and Uracha, since it would have encompassed the first 5 levels of total deity function, and might possibly have envisioned the remaining 2.
And there's 7 levels of that, right? Okay, so they had a good starting place, they just lost out when they left out the personality of God the Father.
So what are the, Roger,
Yeah,
going back to that, what are the levels of,
okay, if you, let me see if I can do this without closing.
the levels of total deity function? I can't remember.
Okay.
I obviously.
Do you remember this chart, Rodney? From,
Yeah, I can't really see it, but
yeah, that was from our teachings on the forward.
yeah.
If you look at this chart, and if you don't have it, I can send it to you. It talks about all 7 levels of the function of deity here. It also has all the 7 levels of the trinities, the triunities, and all the integrated triunities and how they are interrelated. And that's what this chart was about. Do you remember when I taught this?
Yeah, I do remember that.
At your house, actually. is
Yeah,
what-
yeah.
Yeah. But that's what they're talking about here. And each one of these, they talk about which level it is and that sort of thing. Right,
And
so-
then Melchizedek taught this, that stuff as well.
Yeah, that means Melchizedek taught these concepts, basically. And you notice it's talking about up the very top up here is the postulated I am, right? And this was, here it's talking about the third level, Trinity of Trinities. Okay, and these concepts, Melchizedek taught to Abraham and his followers that could understand it. Right? And that's the best place to study that.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
In certain phases, the concept of the one universal oversoul as the totality of the summation of all creature existence led the Indian philosophers very close to the truth of the supreme being. But this truth availed them not, because they failed to evolve any reasonable or rational personal approach to the attainment of their theoretic monotheistic goal of Brahman Narayana.
So where it dropped off is they lost the personality again, right? And that's where it failed as being truth, basically. Right? The karma principle of causality, continuity is again very close to the truth of the repercussional synthesis of all space-time actions in the deity presence of the Supreme. But this postulate never provided for the coordinate personal attainment of deity by the individual religionist, only for the ultimate engulfment of all personality by the universal overthrow. What are they talking about here? This whole concept of karma, what you do, put out, you will get back, and that sort of thing. This is very close to the truth of that in the universe you get what you sow. In other words, whatever you do has a result. Okay? And that result is unavoidable over time. Okay, so many things as you go through the universe and you go through life, you do certain things and you're going to get a certain result from it, regardless of whether you want to get that result or not. But where this broke down with the karma principle is it failed to realize that there was a deity, the presence of Supreme, the experiential part of our life, which adds to the Supreme Being. Okay? And this experiential part of the Supreme, without putting personality in there, it has no function, basically. Okay? And basically what they did was, because of the lack of personality, it basically evolves to nothingness. Okay? Because if you have no personality, there's no experience to pass on to the Supreme. There's no experience for individuals to go up the ascension plan to find God the Father, because there's no personality to find. Make sense? So it all ties together. And that's what they're talking about, how the karma, how the Indians believe in karma. You get what you put out type thing, which is true in the oversoul of the universe, but it only works with personality. All right? Am I up next here?
Yes.
The philosophy of Brahmanism also came very near to the realization of the indwelling of the thought adjusters, only to become perverted through the misconception of truth. The teaching that the soul is the indwelling of the Brahman would have paved the way for an advanced religion had not this concept been completely vitiated by the belief that there is no human individuality apart from this indwelling of the universal one. So, in other words, because Brahman was supposed to be in everything, they lost the concept of the thought adjuster as the thought adjuster being a gift from God, which we merge with our personality and God's personality to become a soul. Right? So they had the philosophy that they just emerged into nothingness, in essence, or the oversoul of the universe. Too bad, too. Millie.
Yes. I'm lost.
It's
In the doctrine of the merging of
Yes.
self-soul with the oversoul, the theologians of India failed to provide for the survival of something human, something new and unique, something born of the union of the will of man and the will of God. The teaching of the soul's return to the Brahman is closely parallel to the truth of the adjuster's return to the bosom of the universal Father. But there is something distinct from the adjuster which has also survived. The morontial counterpart of mortal personality. And this vital concept was fatally absent from Brahmic philosophy.
Okay, let me do a quick overview of something you need to understand what they're talking about here. There are three parts of reality. There's the physical reality, the morontial reality, and the spiritual reality, right? It takes all three parts to make true reality evolve to us, okay? When we're physical on this planet, we have what? We have a thought adjuster which helps create a soul for us. When we get to the very first mansion world, we become the next part of reality, which is the morontial reality, right? We can't go from physical to morontial without the thought adjuster and the physical and our mind, which builds part of the soul, and that soul is what helps us create the morontia part of us. Okay, without the soul, a new morontia being would just be a new morontia being. It wouldn't be you, it would be somebody else, right? But it's that soul that makes us who we are. So that we go from the physical, the total physical, to the morontial. Through the morontia state, we go through the seven mansion worlds. We go to Jerusalem. We eventually end up at Salvington, where we become what? Eventually, the constellation level, and in Salvington, we become a first stage spirit, right? So we go from being a total morontia being to a spirit being. That's the third part, right? And in that spirit being, we go through all the Havona circuits and eventually find God the Father. Okay? Now you have to understand that there's three parts to get to God the Father, right? And what they're talking about here in this particular paragraph is the Brahmins failed that middle section, the morontia self. They failed to understand that there was a thought adjuster that helped build the soul. Okay? And we fuse with that thought adjuster, and that thought adjuster in us helps build the soul, and that soul becomes the morontia being. And without that midsection of morontia being, there is no hereafter. You follow me? So it's all a very distinct part. And they say right here, but there is something distinct from the adjuster which also survives the morontia counterpart of mortal personality, our personality. And this vital concept was fatally absent from the Brahmanic philosophy. They didn't even have a concept of that morontia part, or the universal Father's part, the adjuster, which creates the soul.
Or taking your personality with you.
That's right. We're taking the personality with you. They
You
felt.
don't need to have a personality. You're not supposed to have anything. You're supposed to enter your minds and all that.
That's right. Merge with the universe, right?
You don't have personality, you don't have anything.
If you don't have personality, you don't have consciousness, right? You aren't conscious as a being without personality. So, and it's interesting is that the personality comes from where? The Father's personality circuit, right? It's God the Father that bestows personality on all beings. Okay? So it's a vital part for us to even get back to God the Father, right? That personality. Without it, we're doomed. All right? That was a long explanation of that.
But that was very important.
Yeah.
So Roger, apparently they believe that once we left this planet, You just become part of the whole.
You become part of the whole. Yeah, but
Individual personality.
But without personality, Rodney, there's no consciousness, right? So if you
But that's
did,
what they believe, right?
yeah, that's what they believe. There can't be personality. There can't be consciousness without personality. You take personality out of a human being, the finite, the first level. You take the personality out of the finite level. What do you have? Nothing. You don't have a. You
They
don't have.
believe that, you just you don't exist.
You don't exist. That's right.
As a whole.
That's right. If you take personality away from a human, they are no longer a human. We just read this in one of the Jesus papers the other day. When you take that personality away, you make that human an animal, right? That will respond to stimuli, okay, but it is a non-integrated person that can interact with other persons. You follow me?
Yeah.
All right. Now I've lost who's next. I think Rodney's next.
I think I'm next.
Yeah.
Brahmanic philosophy has approximated many of the facts of the universe, has approached numerous cosmic truths, but it has all too often fallen victim to the error of failing to differentiate between the several levels of reality, such as absolute, transcendental, and finite. It has failed to take into account that what may be finite,
Illusory.
illusory, on the absolute level may be absolutely real on the finite level. It has also taken no cognizance of the essential personality of the unique Father, who is personally contactable on all levels with the evolutionary creature's limited experience with God, and up to the limitless experience of the eternal Son with the Paradise Lost.
Okay, so they don't take into account many different things that are necessary for you to climb the ladder up to God the Father, basically. Okay, and that includes things that are absolute, transcendental, and finite. Things that are finite may seem to be just a shadowy existence to the Maracha and the spiritual, right? And vice versa. So it's just the way it works. Okay, here.
For the Hindu religion, with the passing of the centuries in India, the populace returned in measure to the ancient rituals of the Vedas, as they had been modified by the teachings of Melchizedek missionaries and crystallized by the later Brahmin priesthood. This, the oldest and most cosmopolitan of the world's religions, has undergone further changes in response to Buddhism and Jainism, and to the later appearing influences of Mohammedanism and Christianity. But by the time the teachings of Jesus arrived, they had already become so occidentalized as to be a white man's religion, hence strange and foreign to the Hindu mind.
Okay, since they were not part of the, by the time Christianity came, it was not part of the regular Indian culture, the darker Indian race, right? It was a white man's religion from Europe type thing, and Rome and Greece and places like that, So it was not easily integrated into Hinduism. But much of India did become Christian, over a period of time, right? Hindu theology at present respects 4 descending levels of deity and divinity. 1, the Brahman, the Absolute, the Infinite One, the It Is. Okay, remember that other chart we just looked at? It's not the same thing as the I Am. Okay, it's more of a It Is. It's a thing that permeates everything, not a human, not a personality that person permeates, right? Billy, would you take the second?
Yes, 2. The Trimurta, the Supreme Trinity of Hinduism. In this association, Brahma, the first member, is conceived as being self-created out of the Brahman infinity. Were it not for close identification with the pantheistic infinite one, Brahma would constitute the foundation or a concept of the universal Father. Brahma is also identified with fate.
The also that this Trimurta came close to was the Trinity, right? Okay, it was a close concept, and they picked this up from the early Salem teachings. Right.
It's hard to read. It's hard to read that at the sentence. The pantheistic infinite one.
Yeah.
What? What's the last statement?
Rodney, you take this?
The worship of the second and third members, Shiva and Vishnu, arose in the first millennium after Christ. Shiva is Lord of life and death, God of fertility, the master of destruction. Vishnu is extremely popular due to the belief that he periodically incarnates in human form. In this way, Vishnu becomes real and living in the imaginations of the Indian. Shiva and Vishnu are each regarded by some as supreme over all.
And they can become human. They can fight battles in the sky and all these other things that they have been told to do.
Like the Greek gods.
Huh?
Like the Greek gods.
Like the Greek gods. That's correct. Okay. This is the head of the image of the Hindu deity Shiva, approximately 1500 to 1600. This is said to be excavated in the city of Ayutthaya, but possibly from the former kingdom of Sikhothia. Leaded bronze with mother of pearl inlay and traces gilding for the Avery Brundage collection. It also says here that the head can be recognized as Shiva by the third eye in its forehead. You should see that right there in the note. And the crescent moon and symbol associated with Shiva on the upper part of the headdress. Although the kings and people of the Thai kingdoms were Buddhist, Hindu deities and their lore continue to be familiar. Some Hindu deities have long had a role through the secondary one in Buddhist mythology. Brahman and Andra, for instance, attended the Buddha when he descended from Indra's heaven after going there to preach to his deceased mother. Right? Here.
3. Vedic and post-Vedic deities. Many of the ancient gods of the Aryans, such as Agna, Indra, Sama, have persisted as secondary to the 3 members of the Trimurta. Numerous additional gods have arisen since the early days of Vedic India, and these have also been incorporated into the Hindu pantheon.
Hey. We're having all kinds of cat fights here today.
It's Grayson.
Is that Grayson?
Yeah.
Grayson.
No, it's Nancy. It's maybe
I'm trying to squirt down, just in case. All right. 4. Demigods, supermen and semigods. Heroes, demons, ghosts, evil spirits, sprites, monsters, goblins, and saints of the later day cults. It's the catch-all for everything that's left. Right? Really.
While Hinduism has long failed to vilify Indian people, at the same time it has usually been a tolerant religion. Its great strength lies in the fact that it has proved to be the most adaptive, amorphic religion to appear on Urantia. It is capable of almost unlimited change. Paper just moved. Let me move it back. I got it. Capable of almost unlimited change and possesses an unusual range of flexibility adjustment from the high and semi-monotheistic speculations of the intellectual Brahmin to the errant fetishism and primitive cult practices of the debased and depressed classes of the ignorant believers. That's putting them down.
Yeah, really. Well, the Midwayers have been around for a long time, so they probably have certain concepts of this. All right. Ronnie, would you take the next one?
Hinduism has survived because it is essentially an integral part of the basic social fabric of India. It has no great hierarchy which can be disturbed or destroyed. It is interwoven into the life pattern of the people. It has an adaptability to changing conditions that excels all other cults, and it displays a tolerant attitude of the adoption toward many other religions. Gautama, Buddha, and even Christ himself being claimed as incarnations of Vishnu.
So they believe that everybody that has wisdom is an incarnation of Vishnu.
Today in India, the great need is for the portrayal of the Jesusonian gospel, the fatherhood of God, and the sonship and consequent brotherhood of all men, which is personally realized in loving ministry and social service. In India, the philosophical framework is existent. The cult structure is present. All that is needed is the vitalizing spark of the dynamic love portrayed in the original gospel of the Son of Man, divested of the Occidental dogmas and doctrines which have tended to make Michael's life distort in white man's religion.
That way it can integrate into a will for all people.
There's that word, Jesusonian.
Jesusonian again, not Christian, right?
Yeah.
Alright. Let's try to get through one more section tonight, y'all, and then we'll stop at the beginning of section 6. Is that okay? The 5, the struggle for truth in China. As the Salem missionaries passed through Asia, spreading the doctrine of the Most High God and salvation through faith, they absorbed much of the philosophy and religious thought of the various countries traversed. But the teachers commissioned by Melchizedek and his successor did not default in their trust. They did penetrate to all peoples of the Eurasian continent, and it was in the middle of the 2nd millennium before Christ that they arrived in China. At Fuch, more than 100 years, the Salamites maintained their headquarters, there training Chinese teachers who taught throughout all the domains of the yellow rice. So they started moving into Chinese slowly. Billy, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. It was in direct consequence of this teaching that the earliest form of Taoism arose in China, a vastly different religion than the one which bears the name today. Early or proto-Taoism was a compound of the following factors.
Rodney, let's take it.
Well, the later teachings of Singlenton, which persisted in the concept of Shen Tai, the god of heaven. In the times of Singlenton, the Chinese people became virtually monotheistic. They concentrated their worship on the one truth, later known as the Spirit of Heaven, the universe ruler. And the yellow race never fully lost this early concept of deity, although in subsequent centuries, many subordinate gods and spirits insidiously crept into their religion.
Now, St. Langton is part of the 24 counselors in Jerusalem, right? And he was a Oriental teacher of the yellow race, the Chinese people. So, great spiritual leader.
2. The Salem religion of a Most High Creator Deity, who will bestow his favor upon mankind in response to man's faith. But it is all too true that by the time the Melchizedek missionaries have penetrated to the lands of the yellow race, their original message had become considerably changed from the simple doctrines of Salem in the days of Melchizedek.
And we can see how that happened as it happened to Christianity. The Brahman absolute concept of the Indian philosophers, coupled with the desire to escape all evil, perhaps the greatest extraneous influence in the eastern spread of the Salem religion, was exerted by the Indian teachers of the Vedic faith, who rejected their conception of the Brahman, the absolute, until the salvationistic thought of the Salemites. So they borrowed from the Salemites. Really?
This composite belief spread through the lands of the yellow and brown races as an underlying influence in religio-philosophic thought. In Japan, this proto-Taoism was known as Shinto, and in this country, far distant from Salem of Palestine, the peoples learned of the incarnation of Melchizedek, who dwelt upon the earth, that the name of God might not be forgotten by mankind.
Rodney.
In China, all of these beliefs were later confused and compounded by the ever-growing cult of ancestor worship. But never since the time of St. Langton had the Chinese fallen into helpless slavery to priestcraft. The yellow race was the first to emerge from the barbaric bondage into early civilization because it was the first to achieve some measure of freedom from the abject fear of the gods, not even fearing the ghosts of the dead as other races feared them. China met her defeat because she failed to progress beyond her early emancipation from priests. She fell into an almost equally calamitous error, the worship of ancestors.
So they just converted everything into ancestor worship. Right? It's a worship of God the Father. Alright.
But the Salemites did not labor in vain. It was upon the foundations of their gospel that the great philosophers of 6th century China built their teachings. The immoral atmosphere and spiritual sentiments of the times of Laotus and Confucius grew up out of the teachings of the Salem missionaries in an earlier age.
And now we're at section 6. I think I'll stop here and we'll take this up next. Okay? Is that okay with you? Do I hear a yes?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
that's
have,
fine.
yeah, let's have a short prayer and we'll close for the night. Dear, would you like to close?
Father God, we thank you so much for the message tonight, and may we incorporate it into our consciousness and thinking, thoughts, and to bring more order to our minds with the teachings and help us to understand them so that we may convey them to others. We thank you for this wonderful opportunity to learn and study together, and we thank you for our title that we have, if necessary, is Jesus so, and it brings comfort to me in particular when I think of being precise about who I am.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us at home.
And we give thanks for Roger's new computer.
Yes, we do.
Yes,
give
oh,
thanks.
we're very thankful.
We're very thankful.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Jim Gaffney.
I have two cats that are trying to jump on the